All righty, we are live for another weekly episode of Sports to Suits Live, where I have the opportunity to highlight former athletes that are leveraging their backgrounds in success and absolutely crushing it in business. And this week is no different. If you are new to the show, thank you for tuning in. It's always exciting for us to see where people are popping in from. So definitely drop us a comment and let us know where you're listening from. We have people from all over the world that tend to tune in. And so it's always exciting to give shout outs to those that do tune in. If you're tuning back in on the show, thank you for continuing to join in. These conversations are highlights of my week. I love showcasing people that are totally awesome people and are leveraging their backgrounds in sports and seeing success in business. So while people are popping in and dropping comments, Jordan, why don't you give a quick intro of yourself and let the audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Amanda. I'm very happy to be here and be able to talk about who we are and what we do. My background is the quick kind of further background is I kind of grew up around entrepreneurs. I grew up in the hospitality industry. My mother was an entrepreneur my entire life. Most of my family was. So as I played multiple sports growing up, my focus was on baseball. I did have a sight set on getting a paycheck to play a game, which didn't pan out as well as I would have loved. That's okay. So when I went to college, I played for them. After college, I played a little bit of baseball for some amateur teams. Nothing too crazy, nothing too serious. But then I transitioned into getting really into the hospitality industry. Kind of during the recession era of 09, 2010, 2011, and kind of found my niche in that. Once I moved to Nashville almost 9 years ago, we decided to start to pursue entrepreneurship, myself and a couple friends of mine, and take these ideas we've had for so long and bring them to fruition. And now we've got a holdings company, which is Williams Entertainment Consulting, or WEC Nashville, as we like to refer to it, because it's easier to spell. It takes less time. So we've got currently 9 different entities that we own and manage or consult with on a regular basis. So it's a lot of fun in the hospitality industry, events and festivals, restaurants, beverage, music, marketing, business, just all sorts of things.
So we're going to dive into all of that fun stuff. And I do want to give a shout out. So we've got Jason tuning in from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We've got Davon tuning in from Nashville. Thanks for tuning in. Both of us are located in Nashville. I actually grew up here, so I am one of those random unicorns. We've got Renard tuning in. This is awesome. He is from Winter Haven, Florida, so we've got him tuning in. So thanks, everybody, for popping in and dropping some comments. So you said something straight out of the gate that totally resonated with me. You mentioned that your mother was an entrepreneur. And so
Yes.
I want to take you all the way back into that because my daughter is experiencing it through me as her mom as being an entrepreneur. But what was it like for you as a kid with your mom being an entrepreneur?
So my mom had a marketing company for the majority of my childhood into my adult life. And she now lives here in Nashville and does different things, obviously, since I've got a family and she wanted to be close. But I remember that it was a little bit different. There were a lot of long hours. And I got to help out a lot, which was kind of cool. I remember doing creating my first print ad for her for a rough draft when I was 13. That ended up making the magazine, so that was kind of cool. But it was able to be kind of watch her be creative with her, see that it's not just from the marketing standpoint of it, which what she did. It wasn't just you sit at a computer and you create. It's not creative all the time. There's taxes, there's business decisions that go into it. There's so much behind the scenes things that you have to get done to be successful and to last that. I kind of got privy to that at a young age to understand really what it is to be an entrepreneur and not just, having a side hustle or, just kind of doing something on the side for money, whatever it is.
And I would imagine that that was like a huge inspiration. So as you went into your career and the things that you're doing right now, I would imagine that that played into a lot of the inspiration behind you going into as an entrepreneur as well.
It definitely helped. I actually, when I went into college, my aspirations were to be a litigation defense attorney. Um,
Oh, that's totally different.
exactly. I did so many years as a marketing entrepreneur secondhand that I decided that I wanted to be in law and pursued that for quite a while, and then ended up turning that into a triple major with political science with an emphasis in law, marketing and business administration in undergrad. And at that point, decided that I didn't necessarily want to go to law school for 3 to 4 years and then be um, the low man on the totem pole as an associate for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then kind of work my way up. And you're spending 80 hours in an office in a courtroom, and just to end up getting the day where you could argue in court in litigation, that wasn't really my personality. That really wasn't what I wanted to do. So yeah, completely did a 180 there.
Well, and I want to give a shout out. So I sent a couple of messages back and forth with your mom to make sure that she had the stuff to tune in. So Trudy, and then my mom
Oh
is
boy.
like my number one biggest fan. So cheering on all of the moms that are tuning in, that are supporting and are the number one biggest fans, because I know that that is just such a critical thing. And I want to know from you, because this is all about lessons learned, right? And I'm super passionate about entrepreneurship and exposing really young kids to entrepreneurship at a very young age. Give me like two or three things that you learned about entrepreneurship as a kid.
Oh man, that's really put me on the spot there. Like I said, I think that one of the biggest things is that there's more to it than you really understand that there is. Most people see an entrepreneur and they're like, oh, they do that for a living. It's like, no, there's so many more decisions that you have to make. And like I said earlier, being able to see that as a child, you kind of got a grasp for what that was going into entrepreneurship. And the second is that being your own boss is a double-edged sword, right? It is
That's the truth.
it's nice to think that, oh, I don't have to report to anybody, but it's terrifying to think that, oh, I don't have to report to anybody and it's just all on my shoulders. And I want to take the vacation, but I shouldn't because things need to get done, or I can't be sick today. I can't. It's a very different mindset than clocking in a 9 to 5 where you've got 2 weeks of vacation and 10 sick days to just use up as you want, and there's somebody to kind of cover you if you don't get something done. That doesn't exist in this world.
It doesn't.
If you don't do it, it doesn't get done. And if you take a sick day, you've got to have a heck of a team to support you, to kind of carry you through that. And you better be very, very, on your deathbed to take that sick day. So I think those are probably two of the biggest things that from a young age I really saw.
So let's talk about sports. So you mentioned going in, playing ball. How did you get into baseball?
So again, my dad was a heck of a mechanic. He was a gearhead, right? And not the best athlete in the world, although he did try. And my mom was the softball player into college, and it was, I think, her life's mission to make me a baseball player. I'm sure she would agree with that if she is watching. It's good to know now. But I got in at a young age. When I was about 4 years old, I started playing and was very, very bad until I hit about 9 or 10. And then something clicked and it kind of all came together. And I went from playing right field and practicing my pitch motions and, picking the flowers or whatnot to the all-star team in the matter of 1 year. And that's when it became really fun. And I just wanted to be better and better and better every year. And yes, I mean, my mother is kind of the reasoning behind why I got into baseball to begin with.
So let's talk about going into college. We have a ton of student athletes, so I typically ask this question almost every single time. But when you transition from high school, going into college and playing college sports, that's a huge transition and something you have to acclimate to, right? There's so many different things that you have to, dive into. So for all the student athletes listening that may be early on in their student athlete journey, so maybe fresh into school, maybe going into their freshman year, what words of wisdom would you give to them?
Self-discipline is very, very important. There's no mom and dad making sure you get up and go to your 8 o'clock class. There's, there's nobody holding you responsible outside of your coaches and your team. And you just don't want to let those guys down. And I think that if you've got some self-discipline and you really want to pursue, your academics along with your athletics at a collegiate level or higher, that you've got to have that discipline. And that's one thing. It took me a minute to kind of learn that, going from, your home where you've got overview and, hey, you've got curfews, you've got to be here, and somebody kind of, on you about making sure you're doing those things, to there's nobody within 500 miles that's, is gonna harp on me if maybe I skip this 8 o'clock class and I do whatever. So I think that self-discipline is probably the most important piece right out of the gate.
Well, and you've gone into the hospitality space. And so we'll dive into your career, because now you are like in the bars, in the nightlife, in the scenes, in the events 24/7. But would you recommend these kiddos stay out of the bars?
Yes. Absolutely. Nothing good happens after midnight. I think that's a universal saying. That's 100% true. You can have your fun and be responsible at the same time.
What did you learn being a student athlete? What were like a couple of key things that stood out that were lessons learned that you carry on into your professional life as an entrepreneur now?
I think some of it is really that self-discipline, that there's, it's kind of on my shoulders. And I think that kind of led into the entrepreneur side and kind of got me ready for that. I think that being able to rely on a team to a higher level, you stay in your lane, you do your part, that if you rely on your team to get their part done, that you can succeed. I was fortunate to play on a team that went to the College World Series, 3 times while I was there, and we were top 5 in the country every year. And, we saw success because people did their part. And I think that was a big piece of what I brought out of that into today's life is, I've got a team around me. And if I tried to just micromanage and do everything for them, we would never get anything done. I've got to trust that they're in their lane, they know what they're doing, and have confidence that they're going to deliver for us as a team.
So how critical is accountability with all of that? Because you talk a lot about like the team and how important that like dynamic plays. Like, how important is accountability?
Very important. One big thing that we kind of get from, we work with a lot of veterans in our business. And one thing a lot of the Marines say is trust but verify. So, we trust that everything's getting done, but we also hold them accountable that it's getting done correctly. And when we verify things, it's not because we don't think that they're doing them incorrectly. It's just to have a second set of eyes or a third set of eyes on something, because you never know even if I'm working on something and somebody else looks at it, they may catch something that I missed completely. So I think checks and balances and accountability is 100% needed in any business.
Well, and that's a difference. So that is not micromanagement. So you used that word earlier. That's not micromanagement. That's holding each other accountable and having those checks and balances and supporting each other through the process, and also being humble and vulnerable in a sense as a leader, being like, I make mistakes too.
Absolutely.
We're not perfect, and surrounding ourselves with those people that can support us in all facets is absolutely critical in success, period.
Yep. I 100% agree.
So let's talk about your transition out of sports, because this is a big one for a lot of former athletes. I struggled with this as well. How big of a challenge was the transition from sports into going into business for you?
I think moving from sports to business wasn't necessarily the hardest transition, because a lot of the same aspects applied, kind of what we talked about already. I think the hardest part was letting go of a dream, letting go of something I've done for so long, and just actually putting it behind you and moving on is very difficult to do. I was 28 when I stopped playing, with the dream, and that was not easy to do. I just recently started playing in an adult league again. took a softball, which was fine, but it's not the same. And I started playing it. I had a buddy I played with after college for a while. He called me and said, "Hey, I know you turned 35 this year. Do you want to play baseball again?" I'm like, "Yes." Where? What's going on? Give me all the details. By the way, I haven't picked up a baseball in 8 years, so just know that. And so we started playing in 35 and over league down in Florida twice a year. I go down and play with those guys. And I've done it twice now. We played it once in the fall, once this last spring. And it's been so much fun to kind of have that, kind of be back on a mound, be back on the baseball field, and be able to have the team around you and that camaraderie. And it's so much fun to do. But it's not the same as that competitive level that we were playing at with the hopes of getting drafted and playing on television for very large paychecks one day. It's very different in that aspect. So I think just being able to really take that dream and set it behind you and kind of move your focus to a career is can be difficult.
Was the hardest part making the decision, like actually saying I'm done, like, and once you made that decision, you were able to kind of plan out accordingly, but it was like that toying with the actually making the decision and making that commitment of moving on?
Sure. Yeah. I think that's a big part of it. I had some elbow issues out of college, which as a pitcher, never were good anyway. So I kind of found out my junior year in college that it was going to be a very, very low chance of doing anything professionally after that at a large scale. So, but yeah, I think, really hanging it up and making the decision to hang your cleats up and really call it a day is hard. It's really hard.
But this is something that you and I share in. So I left gymnastics obviously really, really young, and it wasn't until recently that I started coaching again. So I go in usually once or every other week and I just coach, and I'm kind of coming in as a superpower to just kind of work with the girls a little bit, but I get my feet on the beam. And so one of the things that I thought through, especially throughout my adult years, was that doesn't have to be it. Like, and with you, baseball, like you can still play even though it's not the same. You don't have to hang up your passions and the things that you absolutely love just because your professional days are over.
Yeah. And that's where this kind of league I got called in to play again and was kind of a godsend almost. It was like I was a little kid running around again, like I was 10 years old. It was so much fun. But it's really cool to watch all the guys because there's the 35, 45, and then I think a 55 and over league that play down there at different times. And it's cool to watch all the guys that still play in their 50s and just like, I don't want to stop. I don't have to stop. There's nobody telling me to stop. There's a league for it. I'm going to keep playing because it makes me feel like a little kid still.
If you're tuning in, definitely drop us a comment and let us know some of the things that you've picked up as an adult that you set aside for a long time, that you decided, hey, I loved this as a kid. This was my passion. And that you picked it back up. Because I talked to so many people that are now, like, especially through COVID, that they've decided, hey, this is something that I absolutely love. I'm going to pick it back up. Like, there's no reason to have to shelve that. And I love that you're doing that, especially playing sports, because like once an athlete, like you have a heart and a soul and a passion for it. Like it doesn't just go away. Yes. You can't shut it off.
No, and I'm very competitive, so I like the competition side of it. I like that it's not just some little fluff league that we're just kind of throwing the ball around. That it's actually it gets a little crazy out there, and we get a lot of retired players that'll play down in that league, and a lot of ex-football players that play down in that league. That just it's so much fun.
So, okay, we're going to talk about when you left sports and you went into business. What was your first career? Like, did you just jump straight into entrepreneurship and launch your companies, or was there a little bit of a journey there?
No, I kind of thought about it. I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point. So I thought about, once it was really over, going back to law school and pursuing that possibly, going into marketing and kind of following my mom's footsteps, and ended up finding myself in the interim in hospitality. and started working in hospitality, and then just kind of fell in love with the atmosphere of it, with what it really is, the parts that you don't see of it, because it does remind you a lot of kind of that team collaboration overall. And so I kind of got into that, and then that led me into wanting to get into entrepreneurship more and more and more, with our own hospitality group. And that led me down to Nashville, which was right after baseball ended at that point. And from there, it just kind of turned into hospitality, kind of turned into getting certifications, was actually a partner in a restaurant group here in town for a while, and then went and got more certifications, more background on the beverage side of things, and it allowed us to be very specific in our one of our businesses. It allows us to be very specific, gives us the background that we need, that's kind of stands out, because a lot of people don't have our unique background in every aspect of what we do, and allowed us to create something that really hasn't been done before, which led into a multitude of other things that we do. But the biggest play being, it led into the technology side of things. So not only did we find entrepreneurship in hospitality and beverage that we wanted to, but it got us to open our minds into, like I said, now we own 2 tech companies that we're developing right now. And I didn't know much about tech prior to, so it's been a fun learning curve along the way.
So Nashville, okay. Whoever is listening in, if you have not been to Nashville or have been paying attention to the Nashville hospitality scene, it is absolutely crazy. Like, it has gone, and I grew up here, so I've watched the total evolution from, a long time ago into where we're at now. And so even in the past 9 years, what are some massive changes that you've seen just happening in this specific city in the hospitality scenes?
So I've actually been visiting Nashville since 2007. I drove my great grandmother from Indiana down to Florida, and we drove through Nashville, and I saw the lights on 65, and I'm like, I want to go there one day. And I did, fell in love with it. Anyway, obviously Broadway's changed, downtown has changed. It's unrecognizable from what it was 9 years ago, and then even 14 years ago when I started coming here, 15 years ago now. That Broadway is busy. For instance, it didn't used to be busy; it used to be dangerous. You could walk into anywhere, and every bar was dead. Nobody really hung out on Broadway, and now it's one of the number one destination spots in the country, which is,
and it is busy 24/7. Yes. Like, it doesn't matter what day, what time. It could be a Monday morning, and you have got craziness going on in the city.
Yes, it is nuts. With that, though, because of the tourism that downtown really kind of led the charge on, it's brought a lot of larger restaurants, a lot of bigger name chefs down here. It's brought, which brings more tourism, which then brought more and more of the hotels down here. So we started to see a lot of diversity from all these different areas, from New York, Chicago, the South, and Atlanta, and Texas, even into California, with all the political stuff that's going on there, that's driving people out of the state. They're relocating to Tennessee. Businesses are relocating to Tennessee. It's just kind of become this hub because of the tourism that started it all, which I kind of, you can kind of dedicate to the craziness of Broadway, whether you like it or not. It's really, been the spearhead of the change of what Nashville is and what Middle Tennessee is today. But the hospitality has gone from a normal city, small city that anything you can think of, chain restaurants, B-dubs, whatever, to now we've got Michelin stars, we've got James Beard Award winners, we've got some of the best food in the world being made here in Nashville. We've got James Beard nominee cocktail places now. We've got some of the finest wines. We've got, on the beverage side of things, Nashville never used to be somewhere, if you're a supplier, that you were fighting to get into. You wanted to go to Florida and California and New York and the big markets and Chicago. And now we're top of the list. Nashville is. People know they've got a spirit or a wine or whatever it is that they're trying to get it into Nashville to get to the bars in Nashville. So we've got, just the first pick and the best of everything now. It's really kind of cool to see.
So for anybody listening in, I mean, you are a subject matter expert in hospitality in the Nashville space. So what are 3 recommendations of restaurants that you would give that are like local Nashville, like you must go check these out when you're here?
All right. So Fifth and Taylor, it's one of my favorite restaurants. It's in Germantown. Great steak place, great wine menu. I think that I'm going to say it. If you wanted a little dive bar, go to Music Valley in next to Opryland. Most people have no idea this is over there, but like scoreboard's cool. Music City Bar and Grill is a cool spot. You'll meet a lot of people who go out there, especially if it's after an Opry. You might get surprised, but it's little dive bars over there that are a lot of fun, that are Nashville staples. And then one of my favorite places in the world in Nashville, it's kind of my regular spot, is Ernest Bar and Hideaway down at Houston Wedgwood.
That area is going crazy right now. I mean, that area. So that's where like the new stadium kind of area is.
Right down the road. The Soho House Nashville just went in right there. There's a whole bunch right down there now. It's really been developed.
Yeah, I love Americano. So like if you're looking for a good coffee, Americano is a super cool place. It's like this, like kind of got like motorcycle vibes. I don't know how to describe it, but their coffee is delicious. So, okay, we've got some questions popping in. And so I want to take a couple of these questions now. Definitely, if you're listening, feel free to drop some questions. This is a really good one because Jordan, you have your hands in all sorts of different things. And so there are a lot of experts that would say, find your lane, focus on your lane, okay? But this question dives into that. So Jason asks, he said, what advice would you give a young entrepreneur who is proposed with a variety of business ventures, but do not know what he and she should focus on first? Do you have a certain thought process that you adhere with when vetting new ideas and opportunities? That is a great question.
So we work by a philosophy in our office that if it feels right, pursue it. We work with people first, ideas second. So there's got to be a good synergy with anybody we work with. If it's a person, we do a lot of things, but a lot of those things work. And what I've found successful is that my niche isn't knowing everything about beverage or everything about festivals or technology or whatever. I learn a lot along the way, but I surround myself with the people who do know a lot about those industries, so I can make educated decisions and then connect dots where we see fit to continue to grow. So I think if you're being faced with several things, you just have a true heart to heart with yourself on what is truly most important. What do you really want to pursue? Try that one first. If you've got the opportunity to try a couple at one time, go for it and see what sticks. You never know what you're going to find. You may find out that the solid idea, and this is a true story with our company, is, I thought we had a home run idea out of the gate, and we went out and did it, and we decided it wasn't a home run after all, and had to adapt that. But we found out because we tried it. So,
what made it? So that's it. Let's dive into that. So what made it not a home run? Like, at what point did you make that decision that I need to adjust and move on accordingly?
We went out, and so we launched this concept to where we were basically coming into restaurants and handling what your bar manager would do from an ordering aspect, because we understand how it works. It's very complicated if you've never done it. And not to go into detail on that, but it was something that we could offer at a very cheap price, and thought that everybody would just jump on board. And when we started going out and doing this, we had a lot of interest right out of the gate. We had a lot of people come in. And then what we found out were there are a lot of human beings involved in the process, which means there's a lot of egos. If you've never been in the hospitality industry, there's a lot of egos already. So dealing with a lot of egos at one time, and then dealing with former relationships, all these kind of put roadblocks in the way. And it felt like we were putting out more fires and trying to figure things out than it was helping anybody and letting us progress. So we went back to the drawing board and figured out a new way to do it. And that's some of the technology that we're working on now. We figured out how to turn it in from a human's job into an AI tech job. And that's currently under development. So it was just seeing those roadblocks, realizing what those roadblocks are, seeing if there was a way to overcome them. We felt the best way to overcome them was to pivot the entire idea. So that's what we did.
That's okay. Like, and that's something that I want to like really highlight is failure is okay. Like that's just part of the entrepreneurship journey. You're not going to have like this amazing idea and then everything happen exactly the way that you intend for it to happen. Like entrepreneurship is not sexy. It is gritty. It is grimy. It is hard. There are days of, complete and utter bliss. And then there are days that you are just exhausted.
Exactly. And I come from baseball. So, I mean, it's a game of failure, right? If you succeed 3 out of 10 times as a hitter, you make it to the Hall of Fame as a professional hitter. It's something that, if you strike out 4 times in a game, you don't give up, you don't throw it away. You go to the batting cages and work on it and figure it out and make the tweaks where you need to make the tweaks. That's all we did. It didn't work how we thought it did. We went to the batting cage with it, made the tweaks with it, and came up with a new formula that is going to be more successful now because of it.
How important. So this is something that I've dived a little bit. I've struggled a little bit as an entrepreneur is making those quick decisions, right? Like because you kind of, you have the opportunity to like you want things to work, right? So you keep pushing forward, you keep doing things. But entrepreneurship, like in my mind, seeing successful entrepreneurs, they make super quick decisions. And sometimes they're great decisions, sometimes they're not so great decisions, but being able to make that decision quickly is critical, in my opinion. What are your thoughts about that?
I think so too. I don't disagree with you. I think sometimes you have more, more time to make a decision than others, but you definitely do as somebody who's in charge. You have to have the ability to say yes or no to something now. And it could be a big decision that you don't want to make the decision now or maybe ever. But we have a quote written on our door when you walk in every day from General George Patton that says, "A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week." And that's something, again, that we kind of live by, that, hey, listen, if you're going to wait until it's a 100% the perfect decision or the perfect plan or the perfect whatever, it's probably too late. So if we've got a way to move forward now with a plan that we think is good or a decision we think is good based on the information we have, that's what we're going to go with. And then if we need to evolve it down the road, we can. Nothing's ever set in stone.
So we've got Nathan popping in here. Good to see you. Thanks for joining in. We've got some additional questions. Let's dive into these questions because Jason's always bringing some like fire questions here. He says, it seems like you have a solution-driven mindset. How has having that mindset differentiated you from your competitors?
I don't think, we don't focus on the problems because I think there is a solution for everything. I think that a lot of times, especially in the hospitality industry and some of the industries we're in, you constantly watch people, put out fires, as they say, all day. But if you're proactive and you're solutions driven, you don't let that get down on you. You find that you have less of those problems because you're staying on top of things and they're not getting you down. So I think it's very important that, as an entrepreneur, that people are solution driven and not problem driven for just a multitude of reasons.
I switched it in my mindset. Like I got really it's hard. Once again, entrepreneurship is super hard. But one of the things that I figured out was like, allow yourself to be creative in those spaces, right? We lose track sometimes of creativity and how important it plays into some of those things. And like you said, rather than being super harsh on yourself about problem, it's like, how can you get super creative to create solutions in new and unique and fun ways? And anybody that's tuning in, one of the best pieces of advice that I have ever received was surround yourself with people from a multitude of different industries and ask them about some of the things that you're facing, because they can see outside of the box sometimes when you can't see, right? They can give you advice that you're like, because they don't overcomplicate it, right? So that's
Exactly.
super fun, is to get creative and to use it as a way to like bring out creativity, write, draw, do whatever you got to do to bring that out, but always implement creativity in the process.
Agreed.
So let's dive into, there's a lot of people that might have this idea that hospitality is only bartenders or only waitresses or only these roles. And yes, I mean, to climb up the ladder in hospitality, sometimes you need to start in entry level roles. But talk about some advancement opportunities and why you would recommend people dive into the hospitality space.
So I've done everything you can think of in the hospitality space. So I've been a host. I've waited tables. I've washed
Me
dishes.
too.
I've cooked. And it's funny because the higher I got, once you get to like the management GM level, then you have to do everything anyway. So you're over it one way or another. But I think that there's a lot of opportunities, especially in hot markets like Nashville. And there's several other obviously in the country, but it's not just restaurants. It's hotels, it's festival companies, it's event coordination. There's so many things that fall under hospitality that most people just kind of default to restaurants. It's not waitressing, it's not bartending, just that. I've got a lot of friends, and I was a beverage director at one point, and that was a lot of fun. We got to travel, we got to research new beverages on the market, how to pair them with food, and not just why people are drinking them, because most people don't drink just to get intoxicated. They're drinking for the taste of things or how it pairs with things. So it was a very different outlook on that. Or mixology, where you're creating new cocktails, which could lead into all sorts of things in the beverage industry. Being a sommelier and having that knowledge, or WSET, like what our team is, that has a lot of that knowledge. Then you get into the management side of things, where it's leading people. It's not necessarily working in the hospitality industry. You get into regional chains or local chains, or national chains, where you've got the opportunity to go to regional directors, district managers, and up and up and up to where it's you work out of offices. You don't even work in restaurants or hotels anymore. There's just so much opportunity that most people don't even realize is there. But at the end of the day, it's the hospitality side of things that kind of draws you to it. That one thing that I've always been in love with that industry is that there's a sense of pride when you have a restaurant and somebody comes in and they enjoy themselves from the moment they come in to the moment they leave. They came into your home, and you get to treat them. You get to give them experience that they've never gotten. And it's truly a sense of pride and fulfillment that a lot of people get in this industry. So it's not just working my double shift as a waitress to make rent sometimes, but there's a lot of fun and a lot of cool opportunities just in the industry itself.
And cool people. I mean, I've met some of the coolest people in the hospitality space.
So wide variety of people, yes, but a lot of cool people for sure.
So you mentioned like certifications. So once again, there's a lot of student athletes. There's a lot of students that tune into this show. There's also a lot of people in transition that are looking for new career opportunities, or maybe even to follow some of the passions that they lost track of throughout their careers. So if somebody was wanting to get into some of the work that you're doing, what are some educational resources that you would recommend that they dive into?
So there's a couple different ways to go about that. You can kind of do it on your own. They can get pricey depending on what the certification is. But you can do your beer certification, which is a Cicerone. You can do wine service, which is like sommelier. That's got a multitude of levels. Then they've got wine and spirits educational training. That's what our office has. They now do them. We're old, so we did them all together. You did wine and spirits in one test. Now they do them separately. That's more of the educational side, not the service side of wine and spirits. So there's, and then the spirits industry has its own array of different certifications you can get. Find what interests you. If it's in the beverage world, if it's beer that interests you, pursue your Cicerone. Look at working with Anheuser-Busch. They'll pay for it. I promise you. They paid for mine. So, but it's, find that industry that'll help you get those certifications and learn I think that the beverage industry sometimes gets a bad rap because it is alcohol. That kind of has a bad connotation that goes with it in certain aspects. We all fell in love with it in our own respectful ways. But, for me, I've found a lot of passion in wine, and it's not necessarily drinking wine. It's where does it come from? What grapes is it from? Where is it grown? Why is it done that way? It's cool to go to Italy and go to Tuscany and see that this 38th generation vintner has been, it's been passed on his family for so many years. And this is why they're able to do things a certain way. There's just so much history to it and so much knowledge that goes with it. And it makes for, in business, it makes for great conversation. If you go out to a nice dinner and you're trying to schmooze a client, and you can order off the wine menu appropriately, it can be impressive in certain aspects. So I think that, finding your niche, finding where you can get certified to help kind of grow and pursue that career. There's just a multitude of opportunities in different areas that you can do that in.
So are there, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to, are there any books or like reading materials that you would recommend that if somebody's like curious about the industry or curious about all right, we've got some materials coming. I feel it.
So these are two examples. We keep all of ours just in our office. We've got a ton. If you're into wine, this is one that
cool
would be a nice one. I believe it won a James Beard Award. Yep, there it is, right there on the front. That one, if you want to learn wine, it tells you everything you need to learn about wine, from a beginner class all the way to, we use it for our own resources at times. It never hurts to brush up on what you already know as well. You always catch something new that, if we do a private tasting for clients of ours, we do them pretty high end. So we'll go through here and make sure we're completely buttoned up before we go into a tasting like that. And you can find ones like this, and they've got them for all spirits and beers and all that kind of stuff. But like this one's for whiskey. It seems very basic, but it walks through on how to tell the difference between
everything.
There's so much information in there.
And there's so much sophistication. Like and I'm not a drinker, so I'm not the best person to have the conversation about wine and beer and whiskey, but there's so much sophistication around it. And you're right. It's a good competitive advantage from a business perspective if you can come in educated and you can understand, what are good pairings from a wine perspective into the food, and how do all of these things. And it's a good conversation starter too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of people in business that, especially here in Nashville, obviously wine's a big play, but whiskey's huge down here. Being able to walk somebody through the difference between a bourbon, American whiskey, a Scotch, a rye, whatever it is, and ordering appropriately and explaining the differences to somebody to kind of educate them a little bit in a respectful way, that goes a long way. A lot of businessmen that we deal with on a regular basis, they've been in the game a lot longer than I have, and they've been around, around cocktails a lot longer than I have. And it's fun to be able to go in and say, hey, you like that? Have you tried this? And it kind of impresses them a little bit in certain aspects. So it's good information to have in your back pocket, if nothing more.
So you do a lot of events too. So you've got an organization under your umbrella that does events and also entrepreneurship type stuff. And with events, I mean, Nashville, we shut down for a little bit, but we have been rocking and rolling on events for quite some time at this point. So what are some, there are a lot of people, events to me is bringing people together under a common theme to enjoy community and education and all sorts of fun stuff. But what are some ways or some successful events that you've put together that there are a couple of things that you could give to the audience that these are what made them successful?
So there's two things at every event or festival that we do, and our entire teams, understands this and respects this piece of it that make them successful. Is we have a mission or a purpose, and then we have an experience that we tie together with that. If you have those two things and you can bring them together, you're going to have a good event, if you know how to plan it correctly. Obviously, we did one last October. The office space we used wanted to do a showcase. They didn't know how to get people into the door to showcase their office space. And it was, kind of towards the end-ish of COVID in Nashville, and they were at a very low occupancy rate. And we're like, hey, we think we can help you with that. So what we did was we turned all the conference rooms and the entire floor into mini distilleries. So when you came in, it was a distillery tour through the office. We packed it with 200 people, and they ended up signing a bunch of clients on it. We had food. We had a Frank Sinatra impersonator. I mean, we had all sorts of cool stuff going on, but we gave the experience to the people. The people bought, they bid on the experience. And once we got them in the door, the mission was to showcase the space and to let these vendors kind of do their thing with everybody who's in there and let people kind of network together. And that's exactly what happened. And it was very successful. We've got another one coming up that we just got confirmation this morning we can use the space.
This is new information, guys. So if you're listening, this is exciting stuff.
So it's for Juneteenth at the National Museum of African American Music on 5th and Broad. We're going to be using their space. We don't have the date locked in yet, but we're doing a mixology competition with minorities in the Nashville area, Middle Tennessee area. They're all going to be done with some of our clients who actually are all a part of the Tennessee Minority-Owned Wine and Spirits Association. It's the only minority wine and spirits association in the entire United States. They've got 7 brands, so they're all going to be they're going to be showcased there. All the mixologists are going to be choosing from their brands to promote. And then we work with, in our festivals company, we've got a gentleman on the entertainment side, music side of things, and he is bringing in a bunch of minority bands to play covers of some of the biggest hits over the years after the competition's over. So it'll be really cool, really kind of driving home the Juneteenth, message in that time of the year and promoting a lot of the products that we help represent on a regular basis. And yeah, that'll be super cool. And yeah.
Why is Nashville to me, it's like experience as well, but why is Nashville turning into, so we were the music hub, right? We were the music hub, and now there's a huge focus from an entertainment perspective as well. So there's a lot of focus on entertainment and arts in the Middle Tennessee area. Why is that?
I think that just comes with the growth of the city. That, you look at, again, larger cities like New York, Chicago, LA, Atlanta, they've all got that artsy industry. And I think that we've had a lot of it. It just wasn't the focal point. And I think that now that there's been so much change and diversity inside the city, that it's allowed different arts to kind of surface to the mainstream of things. But yeah, and I think that the diversity, and even, we're Music City, but we've always been country music city, right? And now we're becoming more Music City to the true core of that, even though it's, again, always been here. You're seeing more, jazz, hip hop, rock and roll. It's not just country, Lower Broadway, of course, mainly country, but you see all these other, we went to a live show last Friday, I believe it was, maybe 2 Fridays ago, at Rudy's Jazz Room in the Gulch, and the lead singer of the band who played, she sang in 6 different languages, and it was super
wow,
cool, right? That's not Nashville, right? That's not traditional Nashville. It's something very different. It was a lot of fun. So I think that it's just the evolution of the city and the diversity of the city is really letting these things kind of shine now.
So here's another evolution of the city. Nashville, if you're not familiar with this, Nashville is a huge entrepreneur hub. It is starting to incubate tons of businesses, and not just, so we've been known for healthcare for a long time, but it is not just healthcare specific. And I know that you've got some stuff you're launching, and I can't remember the exact name of it. It's the Nashville Entrepreneur Nope. Okay. Tell me what it is.
The Nashville Business Incubator.
That's right. The Nashville Business Incubator. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So we are a part of an exclusive group, a networking group called New York to Nashville, Nashville to New York, whatever it is. One of the two. It's higher level executives that do business in both New York and Nashville, because there's a lot of correspondence with a lot of companies coming to Nashville from New York. And I'm talking large companies, not.
They're huge. I mean, we have got some huge organizations coming to Nashville.
So like, for example, the last meeting we had was at Ankara. The one before that was at Alliance Bernstein. And the topics that are being discussed are not only the future growth of the city and how to not be in Atlanta or in Austin, Texas, and stay clear of those, but to grow appropriately. But a lot of it is to how do we stimulate the economy? There's a lot of entrepreneurship. So one of the facts that I read about a year ago or so now, is that, over COVID, there's been 24 million Americans turn to entrepreneurship due to COVID. Well, that tells me one thing, is that people are finally feeling comfortable to pursue their own dream. What I haven't seen in Nashville, and I've seen in other places, is there are incubators. Don't get me wrong. They exist here. There are a handful, and they're all great. I have nothing negative to say about anybody. But what we're doing is we're offering a one-size-fits-all solution to a lot of new entrepreneurs and new startups. As you think of a WeWork situation, that's a mixed-use office situation, instead of, better coffee and music, we want to provide entrepreneurs that go through an application process to see if they're fit to be able to sustain and grow through our board. We're going to offer them professional solutions, not just office space. So yes, you get your internet and your coffee, but you're also getting an attorney, a CPA, financial advice, a mentor, a coach, marketing solutions to be able to actually grow and not spend the hours on Google trying to figure something out just to pay somebody to fix it later, in many cases. And, even coming from entrepreneurship and my family's background, I still spend a lot of time in the state of Tennessee on what needs to be filed with who. And,
it's the rabbit hole of entrepreneurship.
It is. And it would have been great if I was in an office that, didn't cost much more than a normal office, and had the attorney and said, hey, I need to file this. Where do I go? And they say, hey, go here and do it. It's going to cost you $20. So you're like, thank you. So being able to offer them real solutions and real support to grow or accelerate where they are, having a mentor that is, in their industry, that's done what they've done and been successful, is going to be huge. Having the ability to pitch to VCs or private equity on a quarterly basis when they're ready is going to be huge for those people. That's one of the hardest things to do, is finding money. Well, there's money everywhere, I'll tell you that much. There's a lot of people always looking to invest. A lot of people don't know where to find them. And the board's going to be made up of VCs, private equity, and different industries. We've got attorneys on the board. We've got leaders on the board of the local community. We've got a lot of people who all see the vision of this to be able to help Nashville even explode even more, and see kind of what, maybe what Silicon Valley saw in California, or what Austin, Texas kind of saw in the tech bubble in Austin, Texas, obviously, and see if we can bring that to Nashville, especially with the growth that we're getting day in, day out.
What are and there's so many traits, and we don't have enough time. We're running up on time, so I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of traits. But what makes a successful entrepreneur successful? What are 3 of the top traits that you see in successful entrepreneurs? What makes them successful?
I think confidence is a big one. Having the ability to be confident in the decisions you make and stand by them, for better or for worse, I guess. Having the ability to find your shortcomings as well. I know what I'm not good at, and I know that those are the things I don't handle. And it takes a long, hard look in a mirror sometimes to admit that you're not good at something, especially when you've got the confidence, or you're supposed to have the confidence, right? And then surrounding yourself with the right team. I think that's one of the most important pieces, of nothing else, that you can do, is find the right people that are not yes men, but can truly help evolve whatever it is you're trying to do in entrepreneurship, and can give you real advice and real support, and bring things to the table that are not your strengths, but are their strengths.
That is so critical. And this is so for anybody tuning in that wants to check out the website, I've got this right, www.wecnashville.com. There's all sorts of fun things to check out there. And as we're wrapping up on time, Jordan, for anybody that wants to stay afloat on what you guys are doing or support some of the missions that you guys are on, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
The easiest way is either through the website or any of our socials, which is the handles at WEC Nashville. We've got 9 different entities currently underneath our holdings company. 7 are actively talked about, broadcasted. There's media going on with it, so I don't want to just ramble on about what all are. Everything is listed at WEC.com or WECNashville.com. So if you want to follow us, you get on there, drop us a line. I'm reachable. My team's reachable. So all of our contact info is on there as well. If anybody has questions or wants to talk or have a discovery call about something that you've got going on, we'd love to hear from you. And like I said, just reach out. That easy.
Well, there are so many exciting projects that you guys have going on. So I'll make sure to continue to help support as well and bring awareness to some of the fun events that you guys have. We'll make sure that we promote and help get the word out there too. And I can't thank you enough for joining in and just sharing all of your words of wisdom on entrepreneurship. It's been such a fun conversation, and I know super helpful for anybody that's tuning in.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed being here. It's fun talking about baseball a little bit and talking about where we've kind of come to this point. So we appreciate it.
Well, and there's so much more to dive into. So as you continue to be, you're got some things that you're able to talk about a little bit more later on. So we'll have to do another episode to share some of those things. I'll go ahead and promote. So one of our past guests on, Herb Lang, gave me a Kindness is Free shirt. He's on the mission promoting Kindness is Free. And that's what we do with this community, is we just continue to help spread the word and make substantial impact. And I know that through your words of entrepreneurship and encouragement of the community, that it will help continue to support all of the incredible people. So thank you again. All right. To everybody tuning in, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Good to see you.
Thanks.